Hi and welcome. Today we're going to be working in this concept art doing some photo manipulation and painting techniques in Photoshop. So let's go ahead and start.
So we're going to start with the initial steps of creating a digital concept for map painting. In this case, our theme is going to be life after people, what we just talked about, the story. So I'm always thinking about the story. So I'm going to be using a photograph from a friend of mine, Juan Diaz, that he took from downtown Orlando. And the first thing I'm doing here is I'm doing a cleanup process just to remove everything that I don't need on the image. Always thinking about, okay, where do I need to put the elements, the new elements that I'm going to put in there, remove signs of life out of the image. So I'm going to quickly just concept some of the stuff on the back and see what I want on the back just to try to get an idea of the composition, kind of the feel of what I want in the scene. So on this, what I'm doing is I'm using one single layer to paint. So in that same layer, I'm just going over it and painting with a small brush, hard brush. It's kind of a square brush, just to get my juices flowing and kind of that creativity in there. So now I'm kind of doodling on top of the building, seeing what I want. So I'm destroying the building a little bit. So for this, I know I will need reference, so I try to study my reference as much as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and open some reference images of the structure, and I want to see the windows specifically, kind of the structure and how the windows are broken. So I'm going to keep studying the image a little bit more. And as I study the image, I'm painting on the other one, just on a single layer. You'll see that my layer structure is very simple. Why I keep it this way is because at first when I'm creating a concept, I try to go as fast as I can. So speed is a must, and the image is pretty big, so I need to be able to work fast. And the more layers I have, the more the image tends to lag. Later on, there will be time to add more layers as we progress into the image. So I'm trying to go ahead and sample a couple of things, kind of see with the levels, play a little bit with the lighting. Again, thinking about the type of light that I want as well. So as well, later on, we're going to be thinking a little bit more about skies, a little bit more about the atmosphere, the perspective that we want. We're going to be putting a foreground element on this image as well. Um, we want to concentrate on the foreground elements, the midground elements, and the background. Right now, I'm concentrating on the midground elements, trying to get the idea of what I want. Again, speed is a key here. You want to kind of get everything on the paper first to kind of get the idea in there, and then go ahead and refine it later on. So what I'm doing is just thinking about lighting, the angle of the light, as well as just adding the cracks, seeing where the cracks need to go. I know that the rooftop is broken, so I'm going to kind of add a little bit of that opening to see that the rooftop collapse inside to the actual hotel. Um, so there we go. We could see through into the sky. So these are things that I'm thinking about constantly, as well as composition. So let's go ahead and break a little bit more of this. Let's break these windows out, as well as the signs. And we're gonna go over a little bit more into the into some of the other elements in there. So let's break the edges. Kind of a rebar in there. I don't like it too much, but let's keep moving forward. So I'm gonna think on how this structures had over time, overgrown plant life has gone into those cracks and has start expanding that concrete, so it's cracking all these elements. Therefore, we're going to have debris at the bottom later on, and we're going to add a couple of other things to kind of symbolize how the building is being cracking up. Now, I'm thinking a little bit about the bounce light very quickly, kind of adding some bounce light inside the building to give it a sense of a structure inside of there. Again, everything is kind of a concept at this point. So we're trying to we still haven't used any photo manipulation yet, and that will come in a second. But still, kind of thinking about, okay, you could see the floors in here, you could see some of the walls, the light is bouncing around those elements, and always compare, go back and forth, shut up your layer to kind of take a look at what is happening. Think a little bit more about lighting, adding a little bit more lighting here and there, just to get the sense of the walls inside the hotel. Right, let's dirty up the signs of life at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is just clean up a little bit more of the plate, remove any signs of life like lighting and things like that. Let's dirty up a little bit more at the bottom. Always sampling from the same image just to get the process a little bit quicker. Now let's go into the glass. Again, looking at the glass, the trick for this is just painting a dark color in there and kind of randomize it a little bit to get the illusion that some glass still remains on the ledges of the actual building. So they're still hanging on from the top and the bottom, but wind and weather has just destroyed them over time. So I'm just going to crack a little bit more of the floors, again symbolizing the failure of the structure. Let's go ahead and crack these ones. So as time goes by, we don't know what happened to these elements. They just start decaying. And I'm using, in order to scale my brush, sometimes you will see that the brush pops in. I'm using the Control and Alt or the Option key on your Mac at the same time, and I'm pressing on the Wacom tablet to actually scale up or scale down my specific brush, make it also softer and harder at the same time. So let's keep moving forward with the glass. Again, always my reference open to kind of look at the glass that I want. I'm using one reference for now, just to keep it simple, but I studied my reference before as well. So I already have an idea in my mind, as well as thinking about the story. What is happening to these buildings over time? Remember that this is hundreds of years, thousands of years, maybe. So the destruction kind of comes up from there. So let's dirty up a little bit more of the building, just some patches of dark color. All right. Let's crack a little bit more some of the areas and open some gap on the ledges. Just to kind of give it a sense that it's not a straight, sharp ledge, right? So it's not perfect anymore. You know, time has taken over. So destruction has happened. Just hit a little bit more of the glass. So you will see that I work almost in the whole image, in one area of the image. So rearranging composition is very important. I didn't want the whole center of the image to be straight, dead on. So I rearranged the composition to kind of work a little bit better. So let's take a look at some pictures. So now I'm thinking about the back. So I started a little bit of photo manipulation now that I have a little quick concept and idea of what I want. So I'm going to start thinking about the back. Just experimenting very quickly, setting the element to overlay, matching the perspective just a little bit more, just to get an idea of what I need. Let's go ahead and remove the sky very quickly so we can work with the sky independently. So I'm going to make this 3D later on. So what I want is to be able to have the sky separated from the foreground elements. So I just go ahead and use a square brush to paint the sky in very quickly and sampling the same colors, very randomized. And now I move it to test it out. Perfect. The sky works. So let's put back our elements on top of that background and set it to overlay very quickly to see what happens. All right, yeah, it gives us an idea of the destruction. So I think I want to put some destructive buildings back there to kind of work a little bit more with some destroyed elements in the back. I need to fix the composition, so I'm going to delete these guys on the back. Don't be afraid of actually removing whole work that you have done. Let's look for another image that might work a little bit better for this composition. This one has a couple of nice elements that I like, and it helps to make it a little bit more dramatic, feel like we are within the city instead of just outside looking in. So in this case, I'm going to try to blend. I'm going to make it a little road right around here. Let's put back the buildings in there. So I'm trying to blend all the elements by hand painting, sampling the same colors, similar colors. And I like this element right here. Has some cars in there. So I'm going to put those cars back there. Kind of give a sense of scale and that actually there was life in that city beforehand. So I'm matching it using the levels tool. It's one of my favorite ones to match colors. So let's just select this car and actually add it to the foreground element as well of the building, to this midground element. So in front of the hotel. So let's dirty it up a little bit, make it dark, color correct it just a little bit more. Again, using the levels tool, I try to color correct it. Let's put some graffiti because it's a little bit too clean. I need to rust it out a little bit more, but later on we will talk a little bit more about that. I hope I don't forget. So we're going to add debris to the corner here. Later on, we're going to use this as a little bit more of a foreground element to give the sense of 3D when we're moving. All right, more reference. Let's keep using. In this case, I'm thinking about the ground, right? Right in front of us, it collapsed. So therefore, we end up with this huge gap in the street. And I'm thinking about making a lake, some sort of water or pond that as time has gone by has filled up. and there's no way of getting out of it. It's not like a river. So it's like the street. So let's go ahead and blend those elements together there. So I'm going to take a little bit of sample of the color adjacent to it, and I'm going to paint over the actual element with a low opacity. This will allow me to blend it even better with the colors that surround it. So it's a very simple trick, it's a very simple technique, and it will allow us to make a nice blending in there. There you go. Always looking at my colors, always adjusting those colors to try to get the best out of the image as I'm working. Again, nothing is set in stone, so at any given point, anything can change. So let's keep working a little bit with the back. All right. I'm trying to blend a little bit the two elements together. Just remove some of the elements of the sky here. All right. Just to give it a little bit more, just a see-through. So I'm just tweaking sky areas. All right, so let's tweak a little bit more of the color. Now what I'm creating is just some shading. So I'm set that to multiply to kind of give it a little bit of a darker feel on that side instead of in the front. So you can see the area of light in there. So by adding that shadow, it gives it a little bit more sense of 3D, a little bit more sense of depth to the image. Now I want some foreground and some plant life. So I'm thinking about creating now my vines and the overgrown. So for this, I'm going to use a very simple technique. I'm going to select an area. I'm going to create a repeatable texture using very nice greens in here, very nice elements, just to create the illusion when I'm painting of actually foliage. So what I use this for is I then put a subtractive mode. I do a mask and I paint black and white to remove the areas that I want, and then it shows the image behind it. So you're going to see that I will define this as a brush, as a pattern. And then that pattern, I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to make that pattern a repeatable pattern, making it a scale as big as I want or as small as I want. So there you go. We're going to fill the screen. We're going to tweak the size. And then I'm going to put a new mask, invert that mask, and now I'm going to create, there you go. Now I'm going to create a brush that will allow me to work a little bit better with that. So let's create a vine brush very quick. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just gives you the illusion that it's a vine. And when we paint with this brush, in the mask is going to show the actual picture behind it. So I'm making the brush repeatable at this moment. All right, so now that it's repeatable, there you go. Let's go ahead and set it up using our brush preset, a little bit of angle, jitter, scattering, and transfer rate. Now when we paint, there we go. We got some plant life that comes out really quick, and we're just painting on the mask of the layer. And we get this variation. It's not the same solid color. Now the problem with Photoshop's color is that when you got color variation, the major issue is that when you paint with that color variation, even though that you change the hue and the saturation, still you get kind of solid colors. Using this technique, you get very randomized colors, and it feels more like natural. So in this case, still we don't have lighting information or anything like that. And I will show you a technique for that as we move forward. But let's keep painting the overgrown. In this case, everything is happening within the cracks within the elements. So now I'm adding just a little bit of different color to the vines on the section that is on the shadow. So we're always thinking about the story in this case. What happens on the crack? Seeds have gone into those cracks, start growing, and then it starts breaking up that structure a lot more. So you can see the mask and how I'm painting through those elements. So kind of giving it a little bit of sense of a more natural feel, kind of hanging moss. Let's make some tree plants, things that break silhouette of the building a little bit better. All right, so we added a little bit to the car. Now let's go to the foreground, extreme foreground element on that corner, and then let's go to the glass building as well. So let's keep adding some plant life growing from every corner. So let's go to the left building and start adding some of these elements in. So again, I'm always thinking about, okay, birds fly in here, they drop seeds, they crap everywhere. So pretty much all these plants are growing, and they tend to grow from the ground up as well. We don't have very plants that grow in a lot of sun, but We have plants that grow in jungles and more than anything, because in the city, in this case, we don't have too much sun hitting directly these elements. Now we're putting some on the background to kind of blend some of these edges around. Now you will see that the colors don't match. They're kind of very contrasty, and they're further back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first paint like this, so I know exactly where everything is going. And then after I finish my painting of the elements, I'm going to push them back into space. So let's add the plant life to every single one of these elements here. So that way I know a little bit where they are. It's a little bit easier to identify where I put some of them, where I didn't. Okay. So always thinking about direction, always thinking about gravity, where they should grow more. And again, we're using kind of this similar for everything, but now it's time to kind of push them to the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of with a low opacity brush, I'm going to just push them back a little bit. Not erasing too much, it's just pushing it back. I'm painting with that opacity on top of it. There you go. So we painted a little bit of white in there and kind of push the element a little bit further back. Now I want to add some illumination to my plants as well. So for that, I just go in and select the mask and then paint within that mask so it doesn't appear anywhere else. But you will see that the painting that I'm doing right now, it looks very flat. It doesn't look like it has color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a little bit of the color of that, and I'm going to sample a color of the green, and you will see that still I'm on that color that doesn't look that well. So sample a color of the green, set it to linear dodge, and there we go. We start getting some of the more natural color of the lighting when it hits some of these plant life. More vibrant color on the side of the sun, less vibrant color, or more mute color on the side of a shadow. So again, we're trying to add lighting, thinking about again where the lighting direction is coming from. Usually the majority is coming from the center of the screen on to the left, to the right. So we're kind of started the influence. It's not direct sunlight, so we don't have any main hits of a bright sunlight. But again, we still need to add some of these shadows in there. Again, I'm painting again foliage on the layer of the foliage, adding a little bit more to some areas. Let's go ahead and add the drop shadow. Now I add this using a layer style, but then I convert that layer style into an actual layer. And after I do that, I erase everything that is kind of not working for me. Anything that is on the light of on the side of the light, and it creates this illusion that is in the actual layer style. And let's go to the other side and do the same thing. Erase anything that gives me that illusion of the layer style, because the shadow shouldn't be towards the same direction every time in this case. It's more an occlusion than a shadow because it's not direct illumination. So wherever the elements are closer to a structure, we need to get that kind of occlusion underneath the elements. So we're getting there, dirty a little bit up. Now I'm adding a little bit to green. So I'm using green with low opacity to add greenery or green tone and color to the actual building, giving the illusion that, plankton and algae and all these things has been building up on the pores of the concrete. So just paint a little bit green. So let's go with the idea of the ground. So that's before and after. So I want to add some water to it. So let's keep tweaking a little bit of the colors. All right, let's add a little bit more of lighting information. So I'm using a mask on the layer to add some lighting and focus the attention towards the center. So I got a little bit bored, so I put a waterfall. Now it doesn't make any sense, but what we're going to do is let's say water accumulated on the top of this building and it's coming downstairs and things like that and needs a way to come out. So it's coming through this waterfall that over the years has formed. But then when I put in the waterfall, I'm thinking about, oh, this water needs to go somewhere. So in this case, the flow of water will accumulate now and it will build up in my little pond that I want to have right in front of my camera. So I'm using a brush to build up the atmosphere of the waterfall just a little bit more and to blend the waterfall to the actual building. Now let's fix a little bit more with some of these things. Erase some of that stone so it shows a little bit more of the building behind it. All right, let's paint a little bit more overgrown here and there. We can see some of the palms of the texture and things like that have come out, giving us a nice look to those elements. And again, this is one of the images in one of my collections. So I'm lending this to you guys so you guys could see a little bit more of my working process, and how do I go about creating these images. So let's go with the pond, right? After we have a waterfall, we need that water to go somewhere. So let's erase all this, and this will give me just a base, just an idea of what I need. So I got my waterfall, the water goes somewhere. So I duplicated the layer, I scale it down. So pretty much I copy merge everything, uh, inverted it to create a reflection. And that gives me a sense of water, that this water has accumulated there. And I get the building reflection and everything on there. So now we need the car. So let's fix some of these areas, break them out. And again, I'm working with the whole image at once. So let's go ahead and distort a little bit more of the water using the smudge tool. Gonna work with a little bit more. So let's take the car now. We need a little bit of reflection. So we're gonna select the car. We're gonna invert that car, and we're gonna place it as a reflection. So tweak it a little bit more, erase whatever you need to erase, and distort it using the smudge tool to get the reflection of the car in the ground. All right, so now back to working with the sky a little bit more. There you go. And now we're looking at foreground elements. I'm looking at what would I like to use, like sky. I want that sky actually to focus a little bit more. I want a little bit more dramatic, but that is too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do a sky blending, erase the bottom section of the sky to give it more atmosphere, and then leave some detail at the top to give the illusion of that detail. So a very small brush, and there we go. We have some detail in the sky now, so it looks a lot better. So now for a foreground, I want these kind of vines. We're looking through these kind of vines coming from trees and this foliage, overgrown element, and we're looking through them. The problem with this image is that we can't extract every single element out of it. So we'll have to look for a way actually working with it. So what I did was just go through the path tool and extracted the incredible foreground element, in this case the plant, using the path tool going around all the elements in here. So it's a tedious process, but at the end, it's very worth it. You get nice clean edges and a good element that you could use. So let's extract that element. There we go. Let's move it, put it into place to help the composition. And now we're going to work a little bit more with the vines in the foreground and the ferns that we have in there to see how we could get them out. So just get the idea of the composition. I do like that, so let's go ahead and erase some of these elements. And we're going to see that we can't get completely the foliage out. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hand paint it. So I'm going to go in and just take a look at it and see, do some tests and see what I could remove. At this point, I realize I can't remove too much, but I could isolate that and then go back and paint over it. So what I did was made it a little bit transparent, set up my brush, and just go over it and just select the areas that I already had using a mask by command clicking on the layer of the mask that I created, and then painting over that. So because I constrain already with a selection, it doesn't allow me to go outside of that selection. So it's easier for me to paint the detail that I need to go over the elements and kind of go around and trace some of these guys to kind of get a little bit more organic feel to it. Also, I will put my own strokes in there to kind of get the better feel, but I'm just going over each element, just adding the organic feel to it. Again, at this point, I'm not adding any leaf or anything like that. There we go. So keep adding some of my own and keep moving forward with this. So now, pretty much from there, I'm gonna keep painting manually, keep adding some of these elements in, turn on my layers of the foliage, and I'm adding a little bit more support to these structures. Right, we don't want them to be super thin, so I'm turning on all the layers so you can see the process we have done. So now I'm gonna move it to fix composition. I want a good composition. So let's take away the ferns. We're gonna use those. And let's keep fixing all these guys. What I'm doing is random lighting. So I'm just adding very random strokes to add some lighting into my vines or roots. You could call those roots that grow from the trees, very tall trees, from the branches of those. So in this case, I'm just working with a little bit of layer styles just to get a very basic texture over it. And now I'm gonna just work a little bit more with the lighting. So what I did, it was a simple technique for grounding some of the elements into the image. By duplicating a layer on the background, just and putting it over the image that you have, you could actually blur that element and get a little bit more grounding, so the image look like it belongs a little bit better. Now we can start seeing a lot of these things happening now in front of you. How we move elements around to kind of create that foreground with the same plant life. The thing is that it's too bright. I want a little bit more contrast on it. I want a little bit more tweak. I don't want this vine to cover the whole left side of my element. I want to move it forward a little bit. So we're adjusting a little bit for the darkness. So we're from the inside towards the outside. So we're thinking about composition constantly here, as well as overexposure and underexposure. If you're looking through a camera, we're seeing a little bit of that overexposure and underexposure in the areas that are darker. So I keep tweaking the colors, kind of give it a little bit more feeling for myself. Just tweaking using the curves, adjusting the values, adjusting the green tones, the yellow tones to give it a little bit more of a darker feel. But still, I don't want it to be a mystery feel. I don't want it to be a terror or a horror type of feel. So I still got to keep the idea in mind of what I'm trying to portray here. Again, too much vines on the left hand side. I'm still tweaking colors a little bit more just to see what I need to work with. So I flipped the image just to see. Flip my vines, and now put a little bit of those on the side. Keep tweaking a little bit more of the colors. Now I can see that we have an issue where we don't have atmosphere in between the foreground element and the background element. There's a distance between both. So in some point we're going to have to put some atmosphere in between this foreground and that background so we could get that sense of depth. If not, everything will merge because all the values are similar. So atmospheric perspective is going to be the most important thing at the end to make it feel a little bit more believable. So now we're adding some lighting into the plants, cleaning up some of the elements. So I'm going to add some lighting into the bottom plants as well as the top plants, just by hand painting those. I'm going to add a little bit more shadow to my area there. I'm just going to do a more exact shadow by using a selection tool and making that area dark with the levels. And I'm using that for the original. If you see, I'm close to the original layer at the bottom because I want that control under original instead of what I painted. So after I get the shadow, I turn back on all my layers. So let's go up, and there we go. We got a better kind of 3D feel to it. I tweaked one for illumination, one for a little bit darker shadow. All right, so let's keep moving forward with our elements on the foreground. I want to add some more lighting to this. Birds, of course, always birds. I like birds. So this kind of gives a sense of scale to your image. So let's put some birds in here. I'm just trying different things. Again, I'm trying to work in the whole image, trying to put the ideas on paper so I don't forget or I can start seeing something happening. Get a little bit of overexposed, this kind of atmosphere to it. Tweak some of the colors to kind of give it a little bit more dramatic feel. So still we have this element that in between we still need that separation between the foreground and the background. So I'm going to add some gnats, some little insects around to kind of get the feeling that we have some insects in the actual image. A little bit of life. At some point I will put a deer, but probably not for this demo. I will put some more animals in there, but again, this demo is we're going to keep it a simple with not too much. All right, so let's keep moving forward, adding lighting information to my plants. So I want to add that subsurface scattering that happens on the plants when you have that backlit situation. So I'm going to send it to a soft light so to get that feeling on the plants, and then adding a little bit more also as well to the roots or the vines that come from the trees, from the top of the trees. So again, thinking still about the foreground being united with the back with the midground. We don't have that separation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a brush and I'm going to paint a very quick atmosphere to separate both. Just this random brush that I'm using. Just in the elements that are darker. I don't want to touch too much of the sky at the top. So I'm going to blur this guy up. I'm going to lower the opacity. And now we have a little bit more separation. So I'm going to still tweak it at a little bit darker tone to that fog on the area of shadow to make it a little bit darker. Blur a little bit and then tone it down just a little bit more. And then we turn on back our atmosphere in there, our over what we call our bloom. Let's keep tweaking the foreground. All right, and then the background, we don't want to lose it too much. We want the separation, we don't want to lose it completely. We still want that contrast in there. So I'm going to keep tweaking a little bit more colors. Again, always working with the whole image. Desaturate it just a little bit. Increase the saturation because we were trying to make it a concept more than a finalized painting. But it could be used for either or at the end. With a little bit of trickery and film, we could actually make this a nice piece. So let's go ahead and add my signature. Always, 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 my recommendation is sign everything, right? Let's put the signature in there. And we're almost close to being done. I like to keep tweaking. Even though I put my signature, I like to keep tweaking over and over. So I'm adding more plants, more ferns, and little leaves to kind of get a little bit more overgrown in the actual vines to give it a little bit more sense that they're alive instead of dead. So we're close to our end. We keep moving and adjusting, erasing some of the little leaves to make it a little bit different so they don't look repeatable. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup on our layers, grouping and naming. Very important to kind of find stuff later so we can use it for the 3D. So everything is getting a name. Make sure that we organize everything. So if somebody else needs to use this file at the end, everything is organized. So they know where to find things, they know what to find, they know where the masks are and how to create the alphas. So by some reason in the production I'm not working anymore with that production, they will be in charge of continuing on, so it's organized for them. So there we go. This is pretty much our image, and that's the end of our production, the before and after. I hope you liked it. So see you on the next podcast.